Hey guys, before I start, I just want to say first and foremost, thank you, genuinely. Thank you for taking a little bit of time out of your day to click on my video. It means a lot and supports me more than you know. If you could also like, share, and or subscribe, then that will help me out a ton, as well as this is my first real video that I made, and any bit of support and exposure helps me to keep the motivation going to make some more content like this going into the future, for not only GBVSR, but other fighting games as well as general. Alright, now with that out of the way, let the video begin. Alright. So, you play GBVSR. Oh my god, I suck. Alright, so you play GBVSR, or at least I assume so if you clicked on this video. Otherwise, I don't really know why you're here then. But nonetheless, I appreciate you tuning in to still watch this niche gacha game turned fighter educational video. So before any tech or advice I share with you, let me just quickly show you my credentials here for a second and let you get some context on me and who I am as a player, so you can see why you should be willing to take some helpful advice from me to help improve your core fundamentals in the game and get better at Grand Blue. So to start with, hey there, yes you, watching this video as you listen to my disembodied voice over the internet. Hey, I'm Demp Tao. People call me either just Demp or Tao in the community. I've been playing fighting games for about 9 years now. As for Grand Blue, I've been somewhat loosely playing since vanilla, as mostly a Vera and Yule main while teaching others how to play fighting games in the final years of the game's life. Then after Rising came out, I grinded it hard for the first few days, enjoying the beauty of the entire game compared to the previous entry. Really wanted to pick up near day 1, saw her buttons and skills in the lab, felt how broken she was going to be, got bored, swapped back to Yule. Then 3-ish weeks later, I was the second NA Yule player to obtain Master Rank and then proceeded to try and help teach even more people how to play Grand Blue. I was also one of the original founders of the Academy server on Discord. Taught even more people, took a break from the game for a long while, then came back for EVO JP 2025 and Tide 48. Skip ahead a little bit more, and now I'm here with you to help teach you on how you can improve your own gameplay in Grand Blue and potentially reach the next rank you've been aiming for, or just improve yourself in general. So with that out of the way, and now you've seen my street cred a bit, let's start at number 10 and get right into it. Alright, so in no particular order of importance, we're going to begin with this one. I believe this to be one of the most fundamental things on the list you can go out and immediately start practicing to incorporate into your gameplay, as this is one of the most easiest yet most valuable things you can start doing during matches and start seeing a drastic improvement of converting stray hits and whiff punishes into full combo conversions for bigger damage. Despite how simple of a concept this might seem, it is surprisingly not known nor practiced to quite a degree even in pro play, so this is why it is first. Now, what is input buffering, some of you may be asking now, and to explain it simply, it is this. Input buffering is when you are pressing a button and before your attack even comes out and lands on the opponent, you're already doing the corresponding input for the next move or skill you want to come out on hit or block on your opponent. So, how is this different from what you or anyone else is already normally doing for stuff like combos and pressure? Well, it's not much more different on the surface, but everything in depth of how, when, and especially what you are choosing to input buffer off of your potential hits. To further clarify, the example in this concept I'm about to describe to you is mostly for when you're in the neutral game with your opponent, but can also easily be applied anywhere else deemed applicable, and must be looked at as a case-by-case usage of how you want to implement this concept into your gameplay. So let's understand how inputs work in Grand Blue first, and this also applies to a decent bit of other fighting games too, not just Grand Blue, but for now let's just focus on this game's way of reading inputs and deciding what and how things come out of your inputs. This game has what is called special cancelable buttons, or in simple terms, if your normal attacks connect with the opponent on either block or hit, then you can skip the rest of the move's animation / recovery to go straight into a skill, and this is how all of the game's combos and pressure strings work. Without this, then it would be a completely different and nearly impossible game to play effectively. So what does this have to do with input buffering? Well, that's sort of the thing. I said if the move connects with the opponent. If the move doesn't connect in any way and completely misses, or in other words whiffs, then you cannot skip the animation of the move, or as we stated, special cancel, which means Even if you did a fireball input after pressing your button, then nothing will happen since you whiffed your attack, so it can't be cancelled into anything. Okay, so how is this beneficial to us in any way to know this info? Especially if it involves us whiffing? Well, dear viewer, that's the key. It gives us what's really good potential OS to work with, and we all love easy and powerful OSs to allow us to autopilot more effectively and free up our mind for more important factors during a match. The way you can abuse this quirk of the game to your own benefit is by using it during neutral when you're trying to whiff punish or set up spacing traps to catch your opponent with and convert those hits into full, clean, and safe combos. The key to squeezing the fullest potential out of this concept is by knowing what to choose as your skill cancel off of your button. Typically, the rule of thumb should always be an option that can be converted into a full combo. Reach the proper distance from the range you're trying to poke or punish from, and be either safe or, if not, plus on block if you're playing a character that can do so. If done right, then during neutral, every time you press your button and immediately doing your input buffer, then what should happen is that on whiff, your character will simply do their attack, miss, and then recover with nothing else happening. But if the move lands either on the opponent getting hit, mispressing with extended hurt boxes and getting punished for it, or any other means, then that button should instantly cancel into your chosen skill always without fail. Here is an example of it being done right and in action. So here we got everyone's favorite character, Percival, king of the neutral range with his impressive far H buttons range. Typically, most people here when trying to whiff punish him or play neutral would just press buttons half screen away and then nothing else to try and punish his far H, which is a start. But what happens in most cases is that they will either whiff or just get a random hit off with nothing more to it and still being too far to threaten him any further, leaving him in a very advantageous state to just do as he wants and wills. If you put this simple concept into action, then you can get not only situations like this, but rather many other cases as well, such as this. So now that you've seen how it should look properly in action and know its benefits, let us move on to the next thing that you should start doing to improve your skills. Okay, so in this next part, I'm going to go over another very useful tech you can use to always get the optimal anti-air combos without the need to react to the type of hit you landed. So to begin with, this tech works based off of the input reader again, and how it works during slowdown effects from heavy counter hits. In Grand Blue, the input reader is like a conveyor belt that holds and stores your inputs for a few frames at any given moment, and it proceeds to take those inputs off of the conveyor belt when you're trying to attempt a special skill, and then depending on what it reads, it gives you the corresponding skill. This is how it fundamentally works in the most basic way without getting too complicated about it. Now then, why does this knowledge matter to us? Well, dear viewer, the reason this matters is because of how the counter hit animation works, specifically the heavy counter hit state where the game pauses a few frames and zooms in alongside the following slowdown effect. During this animation, all action and movement ceases for a fraction of a moment until it's over, then it proceeds to resume once more afterwards. However, during this time, the input reader is still taking in and removing inputs, which allows for the OS to work. So now with this basic info, the question is, how do we use this info to our advantage to always get the optimal AA punish? The answer is by combining this info with the previous point of input buffering. What I mean by this is when you press your 2H, you then instantly pre-buffer your normal non-counter hit skill to cancel into, but the only difference to make to it in order to get the OS properly for your AA counter hit combo to work is always after doing your pre-buffer to then instantly do easy input for the other skill that was required for the counter hit route to work properly. If done right, then it should look something like this. The reason you do it this way is because during the slowdown, the game will eat your first input, allowing your second input to then come out instead and take priority by the time the game starts moving again and accepting inputs once more. On non-counter hit though, it would do the first skill input you used like normal. Side note, don't ever worry about accidentally doing both inputs ever, since you can't special cancel into another special skill ever. So as long as you're quick and precise with your inputs, then they should never interfere with one another and accidentally do both inputs ever. Now, with this info and a bit of trial and error in the lab, you can now always get the most optimal air punish possible with little to no effort thanks to just letting the OS doing all the work for you. Alright, so on to the next tech that you can start incorporating and using in your games starting today is safe jumping while holding the guard block button. It is really as easy as it seems for this one. In order to do it, all you have to do is your normal safe jump setups, but during the jump you hold the block button all the way until you decide to either press your jumping button like normal and commit to the jump or land into a throw attempt. The reason you do this is because of how the guard button works in the game. It allows you to act one frame quicker than normal after jumping and landing, which doesn't seem to be that big of a deal, but it makes a whole world of a difference of what you can do off of that one singular frame. This is the difference of people being able to wake up and fuzzy tech or mash on your empty jumps, since that one frame will now allow your throw to beat out the press the opponent could do on your empty jump, and you will now no escape throw them instead, which allows your jump-ins to be even more threatening against better players and makes empty jumping a real threat again. This is a very easy and useful tech that you should start using immediately after this video now to incorporate into your gameplay. Okay, so for this tech, it is also very simple yet very complex depending on the context of the situation. To begin with, what is this tech even? Well, it is where on defense or even sometimes neutral depending on the situation where you do, as the title says, you start walking back ever so slowly in mere micro movements, constantly doing defense against your opponent's pressure without ever standing up long enough to get caught easily by a low press from your opponent. If done right, it should look something like this here, where for just a single frame or so, the defender stands up for a split frame, then they are back down in a crouching and blocking situation once again, and just constantly doing this over and over until they are no longer on defense or making a play. So then, why does this tech matter for them? Well, the answer to that is that the reason you do this is a bit nuanced of multiple benefits it gives to you, and depending on the MU you're playing in or game even, but generally speaking, these are the main benefits of performing this action. The first being that it creates even more space between you and your opponent quicker, which allows you to get out of your opponent's range for strong pressure much sooner and can retaliate more safely while making your opponent have to either A, end their pressure sooner than they want to, or B, get more riskier sooner to stay in, allowing for more opportunities to mash on them and get out. The next thing it does is that it helps to beat against tick throws and other kind of throw situations by moving your character even further back each time you stand up and walk back ever so slightly, which gets you out of the grab range of your opponent, and they have to either delay their throw attempt even more and have to go in even further to throw, which gives you more of an opportunity once again to mash out, jump, or anything else to escape the throw attempt against your opponent more easily. Lastly, it can help mess up certain characters and people's pressure sequences that normally work against stationary opponents but will whiff on those who are constantly creating more space, allowing you to whiff punish poorly timed and spaced buttons from your opponent's own pressure. These are not all the benefits this has to offer, but are some of the most major ones that you will see in nearly any fighting game you play, and is a very vital piece of info that I personally believe anyone seeking to genuinely improve their own gameplay and fundamentals should start instantly doing on their defense to have more options to escape and get out of pressure without the need of taking riskier options such as reversals and mashing to escape always. Okay, so before I start this next one, this should obviously be said, this is probably the most well-known one, yet at the same time the most complicated one out there in terms of tech you can start implementing and doing to improve, because It's a very fundamentally simple concept, yet it is one of the most complex and nuanced things out there, and that is delay fuzzy mashing, or also just known as just delay mashing. However which way you want to know it, this is probably one of the most well covered yet the most difficult concept to grasp. The reason you should know this is that it is a core tech that anyone ever trying to genuinely seek improvement in fighting games should absolutely know without doubt, since this concept is what most other techs build off in fighting games. No matter what you choose to play, even inside of Grand Blue, it holds true. So, what is delay fuzzy mashing? Well, to start with, it is where on either defense or offense you're pressing buttons or doing actions that you normally would do on defense or offense, but intentionally adding a tiny bit of delay into your actions so that they come out a bit later than normal, such as frame traps or mashing on defense to try and escape pressure. Why do you do this? The answer is everything. And by that, I mean that there are so many use cases for this that it simply cannot be contained into a sentence or two, let alone 5 or more. And depending on the game, or even MU to MU in the same game, the purpose of doing this can change. To use some of the most common examples seen throughout nearly all fighting games is such as for defense, where if you want to mash out on your opponent's pressure but don't want to run the risk of instantly getting caught by a frame trap, you then think, what do I do to get out but avoid as much risk as possible? And the answer is to just mash your fastest button you have, but at a small delay. How small, you may ask? Well, it depends on context, but usually long enough to where very tight frame traps that only have a few frames of gap in between them won't catch your press and counter hit you, but short enough to where if your opponent tries to go in for a pressure reset, or leaves too much of a gap during their pressure to try and catch a reversal attempt or something else, then they will get caught and punished for it. This length of window changes drastically from case to case, but is up to you to figure out on your own through nothing but pure experience and feeling it out. After enough time, it should instinctually be built into you of how long of a gap you should have between your presses and actions as a whole. As for an example on offense, it is funnily enough used to try and catch the same thing of delay presses and other delay options as well, such as reversals, jumps, grab tags, and other things. This is also where you start to see some more slight shimmying making its way into your sets as well, from players where someone is just walking back and forth a little bit sometimes, but it isn't the sole reason, but rather a factor of why it is commonly seen in certain situations. This tech is very simple like most of the others, but at the same time is one of the most complex to use properly and even deal with effectively, and should be known as soon as possible to not only improve your defense but also offense to elevate your skills to a whole nother level. There is plenty more I can say on this one, but for the sake of time and this one video, let's move on to the next tech. This one is quite simple actually. It is the same thing as the last point, except you're choosing to use a reversal or BC if you're playing Grand Blue instead as your tech option against strike, throw mix options, and other situations involving delay presses. The reason you choose to use DP as a delay reversal tech is because of what it can potentially OS. That being, if the opponent does any strikes of any kind, especially delay strikes, to catch a delay mash, it will lead into them eating a DP for trying to strike you. It also helps that you delay the DP to increase the chance of catching people trying to bait out reversals as well, by not committing too soon to the action and allowing some time to pass for the opponent to do a delay option against you. The other option to do is a little more safer and covers a bit more options, is delay BC fuzzy teching. This option allows you to late tech throws but also BC against strikes depending on what the opponent does because of how the input reader works, as aforementioned. It's good to use if you don't want to spin the meter or run the risk of getting DP punished if wrong, but is not the answer to everything. These two options are both good generally in the same situations, and lose/win to slightly different options and actions that the opponent can make against you, and it's up to you to rotate between the two options here to avoid becoming predictable by your own opponents. For example, in Grand Blue, you can't tech throws with skill inputs, so delay DP loses the instant run-up throws, but however, it catches all mashes and even shimmy baits. The BC option, however, loses to run-up and doing nothing, or shimmy, since the opponent can react and spot dodge the accidental RS that you would get instead of BC since they didn't do any action against you, potentially leading to them spot dodging on reaction to your RS and punishing you heavily for it, and now you're down a diamond and eating a whole entire combo for it. So use very carefully on which one you choose to do. However though, this typically does cover more options and is more safer to do than a DP option if available, since it covers throws and strikes. With that, let's move on to the next point. Okay, so this one is not really so much as a tech in the traditional sense, but is a strategy to use on defense, a little bit on offense, and especially in neutral. That being to simply use the backdash button more in your game plan to set up spacing traps or to get out of pressure sooner. This strategy combined with micro walking together helps you to get out of pressure even sooner by creating more and more space between your opponent to then quickly get out of pressure by pressing backdash afterwards once the sufficient distance is created to then avoid the opponent's next attack and return to neutral much sooner without having to risk much damage to yourself by mashing or reversal attempting and getting punished for it. This can also be used for offense purposes by creating pressure sequences where despite being left at negative after your own move, you can be in just the right spacing to where your opponent can't immediately make you block nor hit you with any button and will rather instead whiff if they press instantly or try to run in to close the gap, which allows you to in return punish them for doing so by either whiff punishing them or them just directly running into your button trying to get closer to you. If you are unable to set a proper spacing trap, then you can backdash instead to create more space if possible to avoid the opponent's button and return to neutral instead of being put on defense. There are some other niche uses, but these are some of the major uses and should be considered more during your sets and practice in the lab to find the correct kind of situations and scenarios you can use them reliably in. Alright then, so for this one, it involves a little bit of practice to correctly guard against certain mixes, while for others it involves something as simple as holding one button. To begin with, fuzzy blocking is where you manually time and switch your guard from either left to right or high to low depending on the mix that you're trying to block against in the game. For example, Lancelot's U-skill command dash to steal the corner or side swap with you, or Luane's 6xh that can swap sides on you and hit you for not successfully swapping your guard quick enough against them to the opposite direction. There are more examples, but for the sake of showing this tech I will only mention those two, but rest assured this works against any and all left-right mixes in the game, and that being the block button. It instantly protects you from all side swapping mixes in the game without any risk at all to yourself and should always be used against a heavy side swapping character as such. As for the other kind of mix, this one is a bit more difficult to do and requires a little bit more finesse to pull off correctly. That being high-low mixes and how to defend against some of them correctly. The most common one that you would see at any rank would be auto combo ender into the high-low mix for potential reset against the opponent. This one is by far the most common and the easiest to train against to never have to get hit by them again. In order to do it, you need to know how the frame data works for this mix, which For this particular case, the low ender is 14 frames while the high ender is 18 frames. So why does this knowledge exactly matter to us? Well, the reason why is because you need to first know which option is faster to come out and potentially hit you, on top of knowing how long you need to wait before having to swap guard positions to successfully catch the other option that could potentially come out. So in order to guard against these kinds of mixes, you need to just simply time your block switching to that of the frame data of the two moves you're trying to defend against. What this means is that you should be starting out in a crouching block state to defend against the low first. And then from there, you hold it for 14 frames and then automatically switch your guarding position from a crouching block to a standing one right after the potential window for the low to come out on has already passed. That way, if the low doesn't come out and it was a high your opponent picked, you can swap your guard in time to block it. You have a 4-frame gap of a window between the two attacks coming out and hitting you. So you want to aim in between that window of opportunity to switch guards automatically to block both potential options. If done right, then if they ever pick the low ender, then you should be remaining in the block state, crouching state, just long enough to defend against it every time. But if they pick the overhead ender, then you guard switch in time to defend against that always as well. It is a lot easier said than done for certain, but with some time and practice can reasonably be done nearly every single time without failure. This is only one case of fuzzy blocking, but there are many more throughout GBVSR and many other fighting games as well. You can find if you go out to search for them. Apply the same logic towards those same situations too, and eventually you can defend against those situations and mixes as well with enough time and practice. Okay, so this one is not some crazy tech or even something that looks like a strat or tech either on the surface of just seeing it performed, but it is very powerful to do, especially in situations where you and your opponent die on the next hit of any kind, so the chance of getting hit by a reversal is extremely high and you need to do something to prevent them from reversaling you, but also to keep your pressure going because you don't want to give it up and be put on defense and potentially screwing up and dying over it. Now, in order to execute this, all you need to do is just simply either safe jump / melee your opponent, or even just make your opponent block a close light. And then from there, what you want to do next is instantly cancel from your attack into a crouching light or 2L, and then back to a far light or do another crouching light again, depending on how much you're trying to fish for a DP / reversal attempt. That is all there is to it. Nothing crazy or particularly impressive upon seeing it at first, I know. Why does this work though and is used against DP / reversal attempts? It is because of how inputs work and the input required for a vast majority of reversals in this game. That being a forward DP input in order to DP or double circle forward to super. Because of this simple fact, what happens is after your opponent blocks your first attack / melee, in most cases if the opponent wants to reversal, then after the initial attack being blocked is over, they will try to spam their input to try and get out. Because of this, what happens is since your attack is gapless and you can cancel into another button, you will abuse this fact in human logic to your benefit. You do it by using that gapless spot between your first hit and them trying to match DP by hitting them with a crouching low button instantly afterwards to catch them not blocking low and holding forward instead, trying to match the input instead. This causes you to hit them with the low, and then if you're ready for it, you can cancel into a far light, and then depending on the character and situation you're in, can then convert into whatever follow-up you want. Start a combo from there safely, all the while avoiding any chance of a DP ever coming out and hitting you. This is something that looks so simple and quite frankly unimpressive on the surface that unsurprisingly goes so unnoticed even at extremely high levels of play, but can be an extremely silent killer if people are not ready for it, on top of winning games because of this. So for sure, remember this one and use it when possible. Little side note, this also helps to catch people that are trying to fuzzy jump out of pressure / grabs, on top of catching others trying to micro walk back or backdashing as well. So for sure, use this one when you can. Alrighty then, On to the last point here, and luckily this one is a very simple and easy one, yet very useful and powerful one that you should for sure start doing more when possible during particular MUs. That being to use and abuse the mechanic of just blocking in Grand Blue and what it does for you inside the match when executed properly, which is the effect of it giving the defender 1% of meter on block for each successful just block that is done and executed properly. Now, this may seem like a giant waste of time or something dumb and not worth the risk of doing, but the thing is that you can abuse this to your benefit always on demand without any risk to yourself in certain situations. That being when multi-hitting attacks come out and you have to block them all, such as fireballs with multi-hitting properties, Kag's SBA, Lucilius's fireballs, Nier's puppets, etc., where the attack coming out is truly gapless with no chance of accidentally letting go of your guard unintentionally. The reason these situations matter and for you to do it during these moments is because once you block the first hit, and with how the game treats blocking, you cannot leave the blocking state once put into it until there is a true gap during some point in between the hit/pressure sequences. Because of this fact, you can let go of holding back on the controller and return to neutral while still blocking until the attack is either over or a gap appeared. Funnily enough, though, because of how the game treats the blocking state and with the conditions for just blocking, even during the state of blocking the first attack, you can still trigger just block on the follow-up attacks safely without risking a chance of getting hit. Because of this quirk, you can intentionally block the first attack of any multi-hitting move like you normally would do anyways to block just to be safe, and then after that you will want to proceed to go into a normal crouching block state in most cases, and then from there the next thing you do in order to execute this technique properly is, funny enough, simply this: just start spamming back and forth on your controller to go from down back to down forward and returning it back to down back once more, over and over again until the move is fully finished and blocked. When done right, you should see a multitude of just blocks pop up on your screen letting you know that you did it right, and a hefty chunk of meter as well being deposited into your meter bar as well for your skillfully executed timing of just blocking. Normally a move that hits roughly 6 to 10 times depending on the move and character will just get you a bit of meter for blocking, taking damage, and successfully defending against, such as Nier's 236H or her multi-slash attacks as some of you may know it by. However, instead of just getting like the normal 5 to 7% of meter from that, you can instead now get double of that, if not more, if done perfectly to abuse the meter system and end up with at least 12 to 15% instead. That much of a difference from merely doing nothing but defending yourself like you normally would have done anyways, but now effectively making it twice as rewarding to do so now. And that is not even counting the rest of the pressure the Nier might put you in before, during, and after that to give you even more meter. This drastic of a meter gain effectively puts a threat and limit on how freely certain characters can abuse particular parts of their kits without having to worry about the drastic meter deficit they are accumulating upon themselves over time for spamming their moves carelessly. Blocking these sort of attacks over and over during wake-ups and okies to defense can quickly rack up the meter difference if your opponent is careless and reckless with their actions. This is a very simple yet extremely effective tool that should once again not be overlooked if you're genuinely trying to find every single advantage to use and abuse against your opponent to gain the upper hand during a match. Okay, so I was gonna stop there at 10 because it's a nice even number, but after talking to some buds about some techs and tips, this came up as a pretty decently big one, and it was initially about the guard button tech to auto time stuff like meaties and safe jumps, but then got me thinking about other kinds of frame kills and auto time techniques people use to always get the perfect meaty slash safe jump timings. So to begin with, a frame kill is where the player intentionally decides to press and whiff a button completely during the time the opponent is either down slash blocking or recovering to set up another attack slash skill at the exact same time and positioning every time without fail. This is called a frame kill because that is essentially what you're doing by executing a move that takes X amount of frames to fully do and recover from, so you can then time your next move always to come out on the same frame you want it to come out on. Some techniques that people use range from simple button presses like light attacks to whole skills they whiff to get their timing down. One niche example would be using the guard button during combos, such as Charlotta's B&B corner route. It requires her to press and hold the guard button after she does her charged 4-6-H spinny ball attack to always land and recover at the right time, to then attack at the right moment always to execute the 2H timing perfectly. It gets pretty complicated on why the guard button is needed for this to work, and I don't want to fully sit down here to explain like a college lecture course on why the guard button is a necessary and crucial tool to some characters' core B&Bs for pressure and combos to work, but just know that it is. First of all is another such case when it comes to his Oki timing and pressures that he needs to use the guard button. It's just how some of these characters are, and it's just a fact you're just gonna have to accept if you're gonna play some of these characters willingly at higher levels. But continuing on, more traditional frame kills though, however, would be someone like Beatrix, where after her 2-1-4-U skill, she needs to whiff a crouching light, then jump forward towards the opponent to always get her safe jump timing down properly without the risk of being too early and whiffing or too late and getting caught by a reversal. Some characters after their 2H like Anila will intentionally press spot dodge right after their 2H to kill just enough frames to then cancel into 2-1-4-U to catch the opponent raw with the attack to then begin a punishing combo. Others can be more niche and weird, like Bubs, wanting to typically U teleport after a throw to not only reposition to a spot more favorable to him, but to also set up a Safejump situation for himself. There are plenty more cases out there such as these ones I mentioned here, but I believe that should give you more than enough to understand the concept and to then try to implement some of them yourself into your gameplay to get better timings on your pressure/Oki situations. This is what the best players have been doing for the longest time and always seem to never mistime their presses on anything and always land their attacks/combos perfectly always. And so, with that now, I can officially say this is the end of the list of tech/tips that I can think of off of the top of my head that haven't already all been beaten to death by now or completely obscure info to most. I tried to compile some of the most hidden and often overlooked tech that the pro scene has been using and knowing about for an extremely long time now to try and finally either make it known to some of you or at the very least help some others understand it a bit more on a deeper level of why people do some of these actions for. I also tried to include a decent bit of just my own knowledge and found text as well into this video that I discovered and pondered on during my time of playing this game to try and improve to get better as well during my earlier days of playing the game. With that, I now pass on the keys and knowledge to you all to use to the fullest extent now to help improve your own gameplay and fundamentals, and I hope that you further spread this knowledge out there yourselves for even more people to learn and use as well. I still have some other ideas and more things I can teach and spread, but it starts to get more specific or only applies to Grand Blue, and I tried to make this video as general as possible to all of those that may or may not play Grand Blue and just want some general helpful advice that fit into nearly all, or at the very least, most other modern day fighting games, and I feel like I accomplished that here today with the making of this. I plan on making many more other guides just like this for Grand Blue, but also for other fighting games as well, and just some other general stuff. my next big idea is about the lab and how people still don't really know how to use it properly and to its fullest extent, let alone the concept of effective time management and spinning it properly in fighting games to improve and see results, and as quickly as stress-free as possible. It will be some time though before I get on that, but for sure I am passionate about that concept from my recent time of how many people have come up to me and asked me on how to lab things properly, and that comes from people even at the highest level of play as well, so for sure look out for that when I eventually do get to it. With that though, this is where the video finally comes to a full end, and I now begin my shameless plug-in for myself on top of just wanting to talk about some stuff with you all moving forward with this channel and other things I want to discuss as well. Being that first, if you're watching this right now, then genuinely, from the most bottom of my heart, let me just say thank you genuinely so much for giving this video not only a chance but also finishing it all the way through and sticking it out. It means the world to me considering this is my first real video I have ever made like this, and the amount of time it took to script all this is quite unreal, honestly, to make sure it all makes sense and plays out smoothly, on top of the recording and editing too. It was not an easy task, but I feel like I needed to make this video, and I'm glad to say that I finally have done it now and accomplished something I've always wanted to do to try and help this community out a bit more. So again, thank you once more for giving that opportunity to do this, and appreciate any and all amount of engagement given to me to try and help me grow and make something more out of all of this. I only hope for all of your continued and growing support. So on that note, to get away from all that sappy talk now, let me shamelessly plug this all in now. Exciting, I never thought I'd get to do this for my own self, but here I am. If you liked this video or thought that it genuinely helped you out in some way, shape or form, then please make sure to like. For sure, share this video to others you believe need to see this video for themselves. Comment something funny, useful, interesting, or a suggestion you may have, and then please subscribe. It helps me a ton by you doing that. I also am really trying really hard right now to get affiliate over on Twitch. Oh, my own blanket just fell down all over me when I'm trying to keep quiet at 3 in the morning. But like I was saying, I'm genuinely trying to get affiliate on Twitch, so if you want to further support me, then for sure head over there from time to time to catch me either playing some Grand Blue or some other random fighting games. I mean, right now I'm a little bit into Unica, so I'm playing a bit more Strive recently than I am Grand Blue, but I do plan to play some more Grand Blue again when a different patch kind of comes out for it, or there's just a character I want to mess around with for a little bit. And sometimes I also just play other games that I'm into, like Night Rain. I really enjoying Night Rain, so I kind of just want to stream that. But proceeding from that, any and all lurks, comments, and chatters are for sure appreciated to help liven up the mood. So once again, if you want to further support me, just go over there and catch one of my live streams. And if you ever need or want help, I'm always down to help people when I'm over there with your questions. I also have started to make some socials. No promises on how much I will share there, but if you want to follow those too, then feel free to do so. I'll try my best to keep up with them from time to time with stuff going on, but no promises. I have to see what I come up with. Oh, one last really major important thing as well. If you wish to talk to me for help, advice, general thoughts on something, VOD reviews is a big one, or just for general chat, because you just want to talk to me for some reason. I don't know why, but if you do, then by all means, please feel free to head on over to my personal FGC server, Damp's domain, for not only more of me, but of everyone else in my amazing and loving community. I promise you that everyone there is welcoming and amazing people, and we all love some more amazing and caring individuals to come and join us. This train is just beginning, and I hope for no stop anytime soon to make sure to come along and join me for it. Okay, alright, that's enough. I'm out now. Once again though, genuinely thank you again for everything, and especially with this part, sticking through with it. But I'm out for real now. Take care all. Hope you all get some amazing games in Grand Blue, and improve and get that rank you want, or whatever your goals currently are with this game in your fighting game career. See, even if you play anything else. But I've been Damptel, and I shall see you all again, hopefully soon. I really hope. Peace.
I want to oil you up. What the fuck does that mean?